What to do when inflation is on the rise and interest rate down. What causes inflation? Types of inflation are there. The effect of inflation. How to survive. Conclusion and summary of action you can take. Inflation isn't all good or all bad. It drives up prices and reduces the purchasing power of your savings, but it also drives up wages and typically boosts economic growth. That's good for investors and for the economy as a whole. However, that doesn't mean inflation is both good and bad for everyone. In an inflationary environment, there are winners and losers. Investors, debtors, and wage earners, especially those who are in a good position to negotiate for a higher salary, come out ahead. Savers, creditors, and anyone living on a fixed income tend to fall behind. It is unquestionably a bad thing for anyone who's living on a fixed income. That is, an income that never changes, no matter what happens to the economy. If you want to make sure you're on the winning side of the inflation game, take a lesson from businesses. The simple definition of inflation is when prices rise and the purchasing power of a currency drops. It means that you can buy less with your money than you used to be able to. All economies experience inflation and deflation at some point. But where it gets troublesome is when the income levels of a population don't track with or exceed inflation. In that case, people become poorer, even if they think they are making more money. What causes inflation? There are different ways inflation can happen in an economy. Rising demand for goods can cause the supply to go down, thus increasing prices. You can see this in a hot commodity market where the number of people wanting to buy a product is larger than the number of product on the market. Rising costs for things like labor and materials can result in the increase of prices. The relationship between the rising costs and workers' wage expectations also contribute to inflation. This is called the wage price spiral. Simply, it means that as prices go up, workers expect to be paid more, which in turn makes prices go up. A fourth way inflation can happen is when the government injecting more money into the system allows banks to issue more debt, which causes prices to increase. Push too much into the system, however, and things can go very bad. What types of inflation are there? There are many types of inflation, but the main three are creeping, walking, and galloping or hyperinflation. Creeping inflation is the normal, mild inflation most economies want and expect. For instance, the Federal Reserve sets their policies hoping to target a 2% inflation rate. This is considered healthy for an economy, and theoretically employee wages can keep up with this. Walking inflation is an acceleration of inflation into the 3–4% territory. This starts to become harder for wages to keep up with and people begin to feel poorer. Hyperinflation is extreme inflation that can go as high as 20%, 100%, 200%, or even more. The effect of inflation is to make people poorer. Now, to some, inflation is bad news because they don't know how to use inflation to get richer. So, instead, inflation makes them poorer. For instance, employees are hurt by inflation because they can only sell their time, and time generally does not hedge against inflation well. Raises, if they come at all, generally come on an annual basis after inflation, not with it. And as I'll share below, now they're only coming for those who are highly skilled and hard to replace for now. Finally, people who play by the old rules of money are hurt by inflation because they believe it is wise and prudent to save money in the bank. But the bank is smart, not dumb. And the bank plays by the new rules of money. They pay interest on money that doesn't keep up with inflation. Money loses purchasing power as the bank uses your money to make more money. No matter where you turn, things look grim for the middle-class worker. But rather than focus on the negative, I want to share how to thrive in an economy with inflation. How to survive. First of all, do your best to keep your income growing at least as fast as your expenses. If you're working, your salary will probably rise on its own or you can negotiate it higher. Otherwise, make some adjustments to your investments so they'll bring in enough extra money to make up for higher prices. Second, since some prices go up faster than others, keep a sharp eye on the cost of specific items in your budget. For instance, if you notice gas prices are rising especially fast, you can make up for it by driving less, biking to work, carpooling, or combining errands into fewer trips. If that's not enough, you can adjust your household budget, putting more money toward gas and cutting back in another area where prices aren't rising as fast. Finally, if you're currently planning a major purchase, such as a new car, make it as soon as you can afford it. If inflation is at 5% per year, a car that costs 3 million naira this year will cost 3,150,000 naira next year, and it will only go up from there. The sooner you pull the trigger on the purchase, the less you'll pay. Keeping your money in the bank is better, but not by much. The money in your savings account earns a little interest, but it won't grow fast enough to keep up with inflation. Your bank will probably raise its interest rate eventually if inflation stays high, but that won't make up for the value your savings have lost in the meantime. Since savings don't really pay off when inflation is high, it makes no sense to save more than you need to. This is a second reason why it makes sense to make purchases sooner rather than later when inflation is on the rise. In addition to big purchases such as a car or a large appliance, you can spend early on everyday needs like filling your car's gas tank, stocking your freezer, and buying next year's school wardrobe for your kids. Your naira won't hold on to their value sitting in the bank, so you might as well spend them now. However, you can't simply spend every naira you have. Even when your savings are losing value, you still need some money set aside for emergencies, and you still need to save for retirement. For these essential savings, your best bet is to look for investments that offer a better real rate of return than a savings account. Conclusion is this. In an inflationary environment, there are winners and losers. Do these to win. 1. Have a plan, commit to learning about how inflation affects your purchasing power and investments, and use what you learn to create a personal inflation fighting strategy. 2. Watch the numbers and keep a close watch on inflation rates around the world and how they are changing. Check out the monthly consumer price index. 3. Make investments and get involved with investments that generally perform very well during inflationary times. Prices of precious metals, gold, silver, fertilizers. 4. Change your habits. Little changes will make a big difference. Buy supplies and groceries on sale. Stock up on non-perishables when the price is right. Use coupons. Take public transit. Reduce wasted food. GJAMES Associates. Value to lives, value to your business. What to do when inflation